So traditionally, if we look at design, right? So we typically know like fashion design, graphic design, right? Something, we use that word in a various different context, right? Which are mostly art related. Which is, so typically, traditionally, design has been considered as an applied art kind of a context. Right? So somebody like graphic designers, they would come from an artistic background. A lot of people who are good in visual arts, right? They will get into graphic design. They'll get into, and now traditionally we know architecture as a design field, right? That people design spaces, people design buildings. So that has been, what you can say, the tradition through which the design field is coming. Correct. Now, if we look at architecture, now architecture is a amalgamation of a lot of things. Like there are technical things, there are aesthetics things, there are art related stuff and all that, right? And then an architectural building or anything that comes up. So just to help you conceptualize the field better, now if you see what is the difference between an architect and a civil engineer. Okay, so both are involved in creating a space or creating a building or whatever, the house or whatever it is. But the perspective looking at that building is where, if you compare how an architect looks at the building, how a civil engineer looks at the building. Okay, so architect would look at, okay, see, he is more or she is concerned about, who are the people living here? What should be the, what should be the identity of this? Should it be just another building, or should it be, should the building have some characters? What is the lifestyle of people living in it? What kind of spaces I need to give, right? And then the spaces be connected, how the natural go in this building, in different parts, what is the best view that the person would get, right? And then the overall form or the aesthetics of that building, right? But now this is a more conceptual part where now they need to be aware of civil engineering. Okay, if somebody is going to build that, somebody should be able to do that. What are the latest techniques in construction? Can I make use of those things? So that is a foundational process between, let's say, if you have to compare an engineering discipline versus a design discipline. Okay, now take that thought process forward to, let's say, product design. Now we all are trained as engineers, like mechanical engineer, production engineers, electronics and all that, right? Now a product designer, now what would a product designer do when they design a physical product? They would first look at, okay, who's going to use that? Okay, what should be the form of this product? What is the aesthetics? What should be the aesthetical concentration of that product, right? Now, when you start looking at it from a user's perspective, you say, oh, this product can be improved better from an end user's perspective. So they might suggest something more interesting, more feature, which a typical engineering person may not be able to think of. Correct. Maybe they'll say, okay, we can make it more aesthetically very interesting so that people are attracted to it. It kind of differentiates itself from the market. So there is a whole form consideration, how the things look, how what are the identities. What is the personality of that product? Let's say you go to buy a car, right? Now every car, functionality wise, every car is same. Now, why do you buy a specific car as against the other car? Because you like the shape. You say, oh, this feature is interesting. There's a very interesting feel of driving this car. The interior is interesting. Right? So these are the things that matter when technology matures, that every car is offering functionality wise is the same thing. It will take you from point A to point B. So what differentiates is the experience of driving that car. right, is an experience how the car looks, the aesthetics of the car. And that applies to all the physical products. And that is happening now to even in the digital space. Because digital technologies, okay, now everywhere, we have been making softwares for so long now. Now, for let's say somewhere in 90s, people thought, oh, how can we make this product more usable for the people? Right? That gave emergence of this field called UX or UI UX design. Then there are a lot of cognitive psychologists who said, oh, no, you have to think of user psychology while using the product, how they use it. And that's where actually people who had no background in design, they were from cognitive psychology. But they say, hey, we have certain way of studying people, which you guys, if you understand or if you integrate as a part of software development, your products will become better. That's where all the big companies like Apple has been pioneering in this field, because Steve Jobs was convinced that, okay, this is a great differentiator and, that's why Apple's name will come as a pioneer. But that's where it start off looking at holistically, how people use, what is their mental model. And there are a lot of interesting things from cognitive psychology. There are a lot of interesting things from social psychology that start integrating into this whole aspect of design. Correct. Now, that's how the field has been evolving. So earlier what used to happen is people may not be specifically trained as designer, like design as an independent field of study was not there. That does not mean that design did not exist. So people were designing houses even before architecture came out as a discipline, like a curriculum. Correct. People were designing for generations, like for thousands of years, people have been building their houses, right? Let's say all the great temples that those were built, they were all great architects. But that time it was not like, there wasn't a discipline called, okay, I'll go to B.Arch and do architecture for 4 years and 5 years and be becoming an architect. So there was not a discipline of architecture, but architects were always there. Similarly, there are lots of good people from engineering background who were doing already product design, but it was not, they were not aware that there's a separate discipline called product design. So now over the years, what has happened is design has been recognized as an independent discipline, which has its own curriculum, which can be taught, and people will go through certain specified training and that's gave a rise to a design as a discipline, like Bachelor of Design as a degree. Correct. So then naturally, as I said, since evolution was through graphic design, so naturally graphics was very prominent. So first graphic designers were trained. So there was then communication design, graphic design, then came product design. And see, if you see this trend, right, it is directly linked to how the technologies are progressing. So graphics is like creating an impression on a paper or anything was the oldest technology in a way. So graphic design that way is the oldest, the most foundational discipline. So let's say somewhere in 1920s, 30s, when manufacturing technology became very prominent, right? That was the time of industrial revolution. A lot of new materials being invented. Suddenly mass manufacturing started happening, right? So that gave rise to a field of product design. So if we talk about 1940s, 50s, people say, oh, you are just now manufacturing so many parts. Now you have an ability to produce so many things. Now, can you just go on producing, or it will have certain thought process behind that? So that's where the integration of art and technology and architecture that started coming in. So then we started with a discipline so that gave rise to a discipline of what is now called as product design or industrial design, because that was the technology of the time. Now, slowly electronics started emerging, right? And then people started designing electronics things. Now, After that, digital started coming in. Say till 1995, there was no term called UX design. It is like the last 30, 40 years phenomena, 30 years phenomena. So then people say, oh, we are not just designing product. There is something more that we are doing. And these products are different types, because now in between there was a heavy electronics, like electronics were getting integrated into physical products. Right now, digital came in. Then they say, oh, what we are doing something different, but we don't know what to call it. So they came up with the term called interaction design. So I'm designing a user's interaction with the technology. Right now, similarly, now I don't know. Now AI is coming in. So probably something new will get invented. How do I design a human's interaction with artificial intelligence, for example? Because nobody knew earlier that there will be something called AI, and you will have to interact with AI. So now people are thinking, okay, what do we call it, or how do we design these interactions? So that's how that's how it has been an evolving field. Now, when I say it's evolving, the fundamentals don't disappear. Let's say the fundamentals of graphic design, product design. So there are certain, it has roots in arts in a way, visual arts maybe, but now it is kind of becoming an multidisciplinary field. So design, so I'll just take a pause before we go on to the next phase, just to make sure that if you have any questions or any missing links so far. This is one example of let's say this kind of thought process. Mm-hmm. So essentially the example that you gave, right? Mm-hmm. So these are the various considerations which are beyond the core technical considerations. Right. So there are lots of other considerations. For example, if you're designing a transformer, if you're a core electrical engineer, you will think of what is the wattage, what is the input supply, how do I cool this, what is the coolant going to happen, what is the output, in case of extreme surge of power, how will protection happen. So these are all engineering criteria. Right. Now, once those engineering, they becomes the foundation why this product exists, because it has to serve certain purpose. Now, once that is done, there are lots of other things. Like, for example, one consideration that you said is how it will be transported from a place of manufacture to the place of installation. Second, if you heard of this field called ergonomics, correct, which is nothing but human factors in engineering. So who is going to operate that? If something wrong happens with the transformer, how would humans interact with that? Or if somebody has to maintain the transformer, right? What is the easy way to do that? Now, these are not technical considerations. Correct. If let's say it's an oil transformer, somebody has to replace the oil, right? Replace an old oil with new oil. Now you need a cooling, that is fine. But how it will be easy for a person to drain an older oil and refill a newer oil? I'm just taking an example. That is a human consideration. That is a consideration which is required. Then you have your focus shifted from technology to a human, saying that, somebody has to use this. How will she or he will use it? If things have to be made easy for installation, correct? How it will be easy to be, installed. If something get damaged, how it will be easy to repair. Correct? So these consideration of human factors has always been part of the process. Like if you know a field of, let's say, industrial engineering, right? Ergonomics, as I said, they have been always considering that, and they consider physical things, right? For example, you have to hold certain things. You have to operate certain things. Let's say how your knobs has to be designed, and a lot of other things, right? Where you have to consider a human being interacting with a product, right? A physical product. how much weight they can lift, how much force they can exert, or what is the right posture for them to do certain things, so on and so forth. So they have always been part of product design, but now they have been reinterpreted in the context of digital world. Correct. So that's where technology and human considerations are kind of evolving together. Correct. Because over there, what has happened is now technology has matured to the state where it is no more just possible to differentiate a product based on just technical requirement. Because everybody is doing the same thing. Correct. Again, I'll give you a car example. If you say functionality of a car, a good engine, efficient engine, powerful engine, good acceleration, good transmission. Now everybody has done that. Now how will you differentiate your car with competition? So then okay, now you need good aesthetics to sell a car. So you say, oh, this is a better looking car. Then you think of a lot of interesting features in the car. Then you think of, oh, it has a good interior. Because everybody will do the same thing, but you say, oh, I have a good interior. I have good electronics in the car. Correct. A lot of interesting features that go in. So that's how design is used as a way of competitive differentiator at the marketplace. Right. And then so this is about how that field is evolving. So as I said, starting from graphic design to product design to interaction design, which is like UX design, and now maybe going future in how you will design an artificial intelligence. Right. Now there is a fundamental difference in the thought process, correct, which is about what is called as a very technically rational thought process versus a creative thought process. Correct. So all the design disciplines, what they try to get into a student, or let's say whenever you go for an aptitude test, right? So what do people look for? Is now some students or some people will have a very rational and black and white thought process. Now some people have a creative thought process. So let's say, as in your son's case, right? If the aptitude guys would have asked him certain questions, and based on the answers that he gave, they would have inferred, oh, this guy has a creative thought process. He doesn't have like thinking in black and white. He's thinking of multiple options. He sees things differently. So whatever they're trying to train the designers, right, in all the design schools, is to build up that thought process. Because essentially what are they trying to do is, if you look at all the design curriculums world over, right, there is one sort of a thought process, that a mindset that they try to build, and there are certain skills that they try to impart. Correct. Now for somebody to be getting admitted in a design school, what they look for is there a basic spark in this person? That's what they look in aptitude test, right? Or any design entrance test. That's why you have an entrance test to design. So that's why design schools don't go by written exams, just. Right? So they have an aptitude test. So what do they test for is, okay, is this person, this girl or a boy, do they have like at least some spark which can be developed further? Correct. So once you have that little bit of bent of mind to look at things differently, that is essential for any design disciplines, right? Because let's say product design, right? So you, as I said, if you're given a problem, you can solve that problem in the multiple ways. Now, what do designers bring onto the table is that a different perspective of looking at these things. Correct. So that's why it's a combination. It's not a very scientific field like an engineering, right? 1 + 1, there are no formulas. So, the way designers are trained on is to look at the world around differently, identify the problems creatively, and come up with different solutions for that. So, which a engineering person may not necessarily have. Okay, so that's what they're trained for. And then when they're trained, so once you develop that mindset, you basically start looking at the world a little differently, right? You start maybe coming up with multiple solutions. So in design, you will not have just one right answer. Because let's say a problem is given to an engineer and a problem is given to a designer or an architect. So they'll have a fundamental difference between how they approach the problem. So one is called as, a very rational thinking. Okay, what is the cause of this? What is the cause of this? How do I solve? What is the formula that you use, and you arrive at one particular solution, right? You have, let's say, if you have to solve that problem in a more engineering sense, versus if you have to solve the same problem in a designer's space, right? In a designerly way, or applying a designer's thought process, you think of multiple options, and that's where creativity comes into picture. Correct. So creativity is two types of creativity. The one creativity that we know is creativity in more artistic sense. That if somebody is able to draw, we say, oh, he's very creative. Somebody is able to sing, we say they're very creative, right? Any art related abilities you have, you think, oh, this person is very creative, and that is a definition of creative, no doubt about that. But creativity also can manifest in multiple other ways. Right? Creativity could be there in identifying a problem around you, right? Having that keen sense of observation for the world around you, saying, hey, I can improve this better. And this is very unique to that person, because nobody else has thought. They thought, oh, this is normal. But somebody thought, no, this is not normal. I think there is this, things can be improved for something better. Because a problem occurred and you looked at the problem differently and you say, oh, this is a problem. I can have a solution for this. Right? So defining the problem, looking at your world around, which is otherwise you take it for granted. Right? So that is one creative aspect. And second is thinking of multiple options to solve that problem. So designers never think of only one option. They say, oh, this can I do it like this? Can I do it like that? Can we do it this? Can we do it like that? And out of all of these options says, oh, this problem can have a problem. Like there are some constraint here, there's some constraint here. But I think this idea is interesting. We can combine this and come up with something new. Correct? Typically brainstorming that we do, or all these kind of stuff. Why, when you have to think of something new. Now, what has happened over the years is, now this thought process of designers, right? Of looking at things differently, coming up with multiple options. Now, over the period, like again in last 20 years, business people or management people have found interest in this, saying that, hey, this thought process that you use, now that you apply to a product or, graphics, I think that has some merit to solve a business challenge. That's why you see a term called design thinking. They're saying, okay, if you're not designing it, let's say maybe I have an organizational problem. Now, how can I apply this entire thought process to solve my organizational problem or my business problem? So they say, okay, now the managers need to have a designer like a thought process. Because management has been knowing, there was no room for creativity in management. or out of box thinking. It's completely data based. You have so many things. Now people are thinking, can this thought process be applied to management problems? So that's why management and design disciplines are now coming together. So you'll see a lot of design thinking courses being offered by management people or management schools, because they say, oh, all these things that you are learning in management is good, but if you learn this also, that will be really interesting, because that can give you a different perspective of looking at things. That's why you'll see management schools getting interested into design thinking kind of courses. Yes, it really helps.
Mm-hmm.
If you know the nuances of, let's say, engineering, or how this can be solved or how this can be executed. For example, now let's say I have a great idea, but I have no way to, or I don't know how this will be executed. Correct? Because design is not complete unless it is executed, unless it reaches people, right? So unless that happens, now you can conceptualize a lot of things, great ideas, but so what? Unless things are done, unless things are executed, I mean, it's like a wishful thinking, right? So that's where this understanding of technology is really helpful. That's why, let's say, if you see in manufacturing industry, for example, they will typically, people prefer somebody who is masters in product design with a background in engineering or mechanical engineering or production engineering, because they already have an engineering understanding, and then they have an added understanding about how to design a product, which is based on their core understanding. Now this is a very important point, because again, what happens is design is done in a context. Now, how well you know the context, how well you know the constraint of that context, right? If you understand that, your ideation or your problem solving, or will be far better or far more effective. In a way, that's only thing that problem that happens is if you do engineering for 4 years, right, and don't do 2 years of post-grad, right, what happens is, in those 4 years of engineering, your mind is kind of completely conditioned. It's conditioned so much that typically 1 year goes in unconditioning of your mind.
Yeah, true.
And that's the challenge happen with masters in design, because what happens is, as I said, it is more about the mindset. It is more about building that attitude, right? And if you have a 4 years degree, right, you get a lot of time to kind of be in that environment, be in those doing those courses. You have been challenged to do certain things, and then that actually builds up that attitude. Correct. And that is something that foundation takes you way longer. Like, for example, why do people try to go to specific schools? Right? Because, let's say, why people talk about NIE all the time, why people talk about IDC, Srishti, because that foundation that you get there. Correct. So that actually, because that builds up your foundation very strong way. See, you can also do, like, for example, UX design, right? There are 3 months courses by which you can also be an UI UX designer. Correct. Now, that will qualify you to do an execution level. क्या चाहिए करो? If you have given कि ठीक है इसको बना के दे दो. It's like a DTP operator, right? But you're just using a different tool. you're just using Figma to create these wireframes. Now, will it help you being chosen as a UX designer as Google? May not be. Because they will look for something far more fundamental. Right? Because as I said, this is, if they say, okay, are you coming up with a different thought process, which we don't have? Because they're paying you for that. Right? So if you, and how do you build that? Now people parallelly also do both the things. Like there are some courses which are offered which have a combination of engineering and design. So let's say in Ujjain, so MIT group has a university called Avantika University. Now they try to merge the so now we will merge these two just to cater to exact same point you said. Can they be taught engineering and design together in the bachelor's itself? So there are a few people experimenting in this direction, but if you look at the foundation, right, the foundation would be far solid if they do bachelor's. So if, for example, there are now let's say if you take like a BDES course at IIT Guwahati, right? So they don't allow non apply for that. Because let's say if you have done your BCom or BA, you cannot apply for their Bachelor's of Design course. Because they firmly believe that science background is necessary because they're part of an IIT, and then say, oh, this is important. And then if the person has a good analytical abilities, then we'll kind of build their creative abilities through this course. So each school in a way has a different, what you can say, a founding philosophy, or by which the curriculum is run. Right now, if you look at, let's say, institute like NID, they are more focused on the artistic aspect of it. Now, let's say an institute like IDC in IIT Mumbai, so they have the entrance is designed in such a way that you have a good mix of analytical and creative abilities. So there are two parts to the entrance exam. So one part, they completely check your analytical abilities, and second part, they check your creative abilities. So yeah, so depending upon that, how each school is looking at it, right? Now, this is not just in India. So even outside universities that you see, right? Now, some of them are more closer to engineering. Though they call it like interaction design, but they are part of computer science department.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some of them they come more from a art tradition. Some come from an engineering tradition, and they kind of get amalgamated at a design stage where it is kind of a mixture of art and designs and technology together. So to answer your question, it is dependent on an individual university how those curriculums are designed, because there is a strong what you can say, what is the core philosophy with which that institute has been built. Yeah, for example, as I said, the pattern that at least I have seen is, let's say if you have some of the kids who have a very extremely good drawing abilities, like art school kind of people, they get selected. Let's say if you have to go be qualified in, let's say, NID in Ahmedabad or across India, so you need extremely good level of artistic abilities. Without that, you will not be able to qualify. Correct. Now, there are some schools, as I said, IDC would look for both the things. So there are two parts to the entrance. They think that your analytical abilities have to be equally good as your artistic abilities. So left and right part of brain have to be equally powerful.
Got it.
If you look at now, unfortunately, what is happening is, since designing is emerging discipline, right? It is not as popular as engineering or medicine. There is no unified one single entrance across India.
Okay. I see.
Like, so the way you have JEE or CET or something, right?
Neat.
Or whatever. So there's no India-centric single entrance. So
I see.
unfortunately, what that results into, that the candidate will have to apply for 4 or 5 different entrances.
I see.
So the most prominent ones are, naturally, the first one is National Institute of Design. That it conducts its own entrance. Then second is called as UCED. UCEED, Undergraduate Common Examination for Design. Right? So that is conducted for all IITs. And a lot of other private institutes also consider that score.
Okay.
So that's called UCED. Now, if the kid has a little inclination toward architecture, there's another entrance called NATA, NATA, which is an architectural entrance. Correct. Now, MIT Institute of Design, where I teach, right? So they also conduct their own entrance called DAT, DAT, Design Aptitude Test. Right.
I'm just noting down while you're speaking.
Yeah. So now Srishti Manipal Institute of Design also is one of the prominent design schools in Bangalore. So they also conduct their own entrance. And there are lots of private schools. I don't know, like there are few hundred right now across India. In Pune itself, there are 9 design schools. So yeah, so each will follow. Now some take UC score as a valid. So if you they don't look for other entrances and all that, right? Yeah. So that these are some of the things that you should. Now there is another, if you want to pursue more in the fashion side, right? So NIFT has its own entrance. National Institute of Fashion Technology has its own entrance.
And then any of them take from JEE main also, or it is all nothing
I
from
think,
JEE?
I don't know. Only I need to check for IIT Guwahati, but I don't think anybody takes from JEE mains, like as directly. If you applied for JEE and that course is considered, I'm really not sure, because I just need to check with IIT Guwahati, because they might be considering.
I see.
But I'm not really sure. I'll just get back to you. I'll just let you know that.
The reason I asked that question is, during our time itself, like I'm talking 25 years back, we used to write JEE, and those who want to go into architecture in specific, they used to write one extra paper along with JEE to get into architecture.
Correct.
So I'm just asking from that perspective.
No, but I think now it will have a separate entrance. Like for example, architecture, you have to have NATA, like a architectural entrance and all that, right? And another challenge that we have seen is kids themselves are not very clear about what they want to do. That's a common challenge. Like if you say, they say, okay, I'll try this thing, that thing. Now my friend's son, he was like preparing for JEE, and suddenly he decided to okay, I don't want to do JEE, I'll do design. So in the last moment, he said, I'll do design entrances. So I mean, their interest kind of swings to both the extremes. So it's a very difficult process. So to decide, again, another thing is, even if you decide design as a stream, which sub-discipline to take? Should you go for graphics? Should you go, because in our college itself, there are like 9 different sub-disciplines in design. So we have product design, we have graphic design, we have animation, we have fashion design, we have retail and exhibition design, we have interior space and furniture design. So there are so many of them, like almost 9 or 10 sub-disciplines within design. So another confusion arises when you have to decide, which one should I take?
Hmm.
Correct. Now what happens is, particularly what happens is people go by ki where is the scope or which has a greater job opportunities.
Hmm.
So naturally people end up taking UX design because that has like in demand right now, and there are jobs available as such.
Hmm.
um, but see what happens is again in design field is it's also like a, what I should say, it's what you make of it, right? It's a passion based field.
Hmm.
There are a lot of interesting graphic designer who are doing fantastic work, but nobody offered them a job. But since they were like at the core, they were interested in that, they kind of initially they struggled, but then they emerged as a very successful graphic designers. Now somebody say, oh, are there jobs in graphic design? May not be.
Hmm.
But are there very successful world renowned graphic designers? Yes. So it is that way, you know, some people are very, now some of the kids we've seen, they're very clear that I want to do in animation because they're so passionate. Now in their 10th 12 also they say कि नहीं मुझे animation ही करना है, मुझे animation में कुछ करना है, whatever job मिले ना मिले, I want to do something in animation or I'll create something. Because again it's up to an individual's work, right? It is like what you do of it. And then unless you're passionate, right, you might land up doing a job but may not do good in that field, because this has typically happened in UX design, right? People are not really keen on doing that, but somebody has told that there are jobs in UX, ये करो तुमको job मिल जाएगा, right? And they come, I mean they get job, no doubt, but will they, to which height do they go or what level do they reach is a separate story. You might be doing a good job, but there are very interesting cases where people, since they were very keen on certain things, right, they initially they had a struggle, but then they kind of the nature of their work actually brings a lot of things to them. And unless you have that passion for that field, right, otherwise you will end up doing just a job. I mean, that if that is the case, you will always get a job in UX. Right, but there are like people who would do beyond that, right? And then they say, okay, this is something. Now you will see a lot of designers who may not be formally trained in any of the design schools, but they are like world-renowned designers because they are so keen in their, you know, they're so committed to that field, or you know, whatever, they'll acquire new knowledge, they'll do something. They may not go to any design schools anywhere in the world, but they are like one of the finest designers in industry. So yeah, so you'll have to look at these two things. If you are like very job focused and you are ready to do anything, my only aim is to get a job, you know, probably, as I said, UX design is something which has jobs as such if you just search for it. But if the kid knows, if this is what is my interest area, this is one thing that I'm very keen at, you know, then people can pursue different, but naturally then they should be, and just like in any other career, right, there are always certain levels of initial years of hardship, like, you know, where you'll have to kind of do apprentice, try to figure out. So it's like having career in, let's say, any art disciplines, right? Now, can you, let's say, if you do a BFA, Bachelor of Fine Art, can you guarantee there will be like ready-made jobs? If you study, correct, if somebody does a bachelor's in music, right, can you guarantee if there is a ready-made, you do bachelor in BA in music and somebody's ready with a job? No, it's what you do of it. So that's how you build your career as a musician, right, or whatever. So there'll be, so, but then once you kind of become an accomplished musician or accomplished artist, you know, the jobs will come to you rather than you searching for that. But you should be able to, it requires certain investment. So that's the balance you'll have to see. And people who are really, even in UX field, right, people who are really keen on that, you know, constantly learning, really interested, they go to a different height. So again, the point is just having, so balancing of job opportunities, ready-made job versus your passion to that field, or how keen you are in that, right? So then if you have a balance of these, then things would really be working out really good. It's known as foundation year, where there it is completely discipline agnostic. So they have been exposed to various things in design disciplines, different types, and this is a time they can fine tune their interest. Okay, am I liking this? Am I liking that? You know, and let's say just to cater to this problem. Now, some of the design schools, they go more what you can say liberal arts way. For example, and this is also coming to India with NEP coming in, right? So there is a concept of major and minor. There's a concept of electives. So it is not a watertight boundaries right now. So you can, let's say, if you think you like product design, right? You can have a major in product design, but you say also have a keen interest in graphics. I'm not really. So you can have minor in graphics, or major in, let's say, graphic design, but you say I'm also liking this UX part of it. So you can do minor in UX. Or somebody in product design who likes to do physical things, right? They also have, let's say, interest in transportation, cars, and all these things. So they can do a major in product design with a minor in transportation design. So this whole concept of electives and major minor, now that has been coming in India to all the design schools. So the kids will have an option to choose or decide which one, what should be their major and what should be their minor, what electives you can take. So it's kind of becoming very flexible with the new education policy coming in, right? So going forward, it's going to be very flexible. Yeah.